Special Libraries SJSU Student Group Webinar on Library User Experience with Aaron Schmidt. Thank you all for joining us. Some of you may already know Aaron. He teaches Info 287 Library User Experience and Info 200, right?
That's right, yeah.
In addition, okay, cool. In addition to being an iSchool instructor, Aaron is the principal of Influx Library User Experience Consulting and a regular contributor to the Library Journal, where he writes a column on user experience, an author of several books on the topic, and a blogger at walkingpaper.org. If you have not taken a class with him, you definitely should. If the Library User Experience class is being made available again, I highly recommend that you take it. It is a really great way to learn how to make the library more welcoming to patrons and to beautify it, really. I'm sure Aaron will talk about it also. I can tell you that after I took a class with him at my work, we redesigned the website, and we have redesigned all of our signs and many other things based on the things that I learned in the class. So it was really useful and great. It will completely change your outlook on library design. I think that today's webinar is probably a little bit of a taste of the class, right? And I hope it will give you an idea of the field of user experience. Before we start, I wanted to remind you that after the event, we will stay for a few minutes to answer questions about the open SLASC position. So please join us if you are interested. And of course, Dr. Z is inviting everybody to come and talk to us about Toronto. So I hope that you will stay and talk to us for a little bit. But now, without further ado, let me turn the mic over to Aaron Schmidt. Thank you for coming, Aaron.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and whet your appetite for the Library User Experience Seminar in the program, but also just to talk about this stuff with you. And as I'm speaking, I'm just looking about how to share my screen. We had it all worked out earlier, and then I went ahead and monkeyed with a bunch of stuff, and now it's not so obvious anymore. So I'm just trying to do two things at once here. Let me just, there we go. I just hit start sharing, so maybe that'll work. We had it working
We
so
did.
well.
Collaborate can be really tricky that way.
Yeah. So let's see here. You know what? I wonder if I just exit out and come back in.
Okay. Yeah, we can use that time to talk about. Ah, there you go. Perfect.
Oh, there you are. Great.
Oh. Okay. At least I'm showing my desktop.
Yes.
All right. Can you see my
can.
slide? Okay. Great. All right. Fantastic. I can't see the chat anymore, so if you have something to interject, please do so with your voice, not with chat. I'm going to try to run through my slides and leave plenty of time for talking, so hang on. Okay, so let me start off by talking about the Hollywood Theater here in Portland, where I live. Love this place. I try to visit on a weekly basis. Let's just say, for instance, that you were going to make a website for the Hollywood Theater. You were in charge of this all of a sudden. What sorts of things would you put on the homepage of the Hollywood Theater's website? So somebody shout some things out.
Hours, history.
Yep, hours in history.
Ticket prices.
Good one. Prices. We're missing a very crucial one.
What is it? What's our things show there?
Yeah, what's playing? What's playing now, right? Okay, so all those things are probably pretty obvious, and we see a lot of user-centered design in our responses. We can think about who is using a movie theater, and we know what they might want to know, right? What's playing, how much it costs, what's the history of that cool building. So this user-centered design stuff and thinking about user experience is quite intuitive. Now, whether or not libraries put this kind of intuitive, commonsensical framework into practice is another story, and there are all sorts of associated challenges with being user-centered and implementing user-centered design. But I think at its core, it just plain makes sense to me. We need to anticipate people's needs and plan our programs and services accordingly. So you all get it already. And I want to say that no matter what you're going to do in your career as an information professional, I do believe that all librarians are user experience librarians, and all aspects of libraries impact the overall user experience, from policy making to customer service to facility staff. Everybody impacts how people experience libraries, and I think we need to take this role seriously. And when we can be intentional about this role, we can design amazing experiences for folks. So take this typical library task. This is all the steps it takes for someone to find out about an item, place a hold on this item, pick it up in the library, check it out. Here we have 13 steps. We could probably break some of these things down into sub-steps as well. And we see a lot of different types of touch points here. We see something in print, we see something online, we see some physical stuff. Item 12 is a customer service interaction. All of these things add up to impact the user experience for this task. And this is just one small library task. There are a lot of moving parts. So implicit in this user-centered perspective is the idea that we need to make this stuff easy, and we need to make it interesting. We need to not do this. This is like the bad approach. So there's kind of a mantra that we could say: the user is not broken. We need to design services for people, not force people to adapt to the will of libraries and librarians. Why? Because people deal with information all of the time, and people's everyday life, information-seeking behaviors, is pretty much inseparable from how they will approach using a library. And since people are accustomed to dealing with information in a certain way, we certainly, all the time, we certainly need to keep this in mind as we design library services. So one high-level, big-picture thing that user experience has some things to say about is just this existential question of what are we doing here in libraries. And I want to take just a moment to talk about MTV. And depending on what generation you're of, you might recognize this logo a little bit more for MTV. This is the current one. And if you haven't seen it recently, or you don't know about this, music television, MTV, is no longer music television. They're just called MTV, and they don't show music videos anymore. Music videos, I guess, are a thing of the past, or they're just on YouTube now or something. But music television changed, and they don't show music videos anymore. They just show like really crummy reality TV, I guess. So there's that. And if you'll also forgive this little bit of an untoward example, but one that I think is still relevant, Playboy no longer has nudity in their magazine. I mean, Playboy has always had some like journalism and some interesting articles, right? But they also had nude photographs. They don't do that anymore. They fundamentally changed as well. We still call this thing a phone. So my point in talking about this in relation to the purpose of libraries is we can reinterpret what we do, much like MTV has been reinterpreted. Playboy is a lot different now. This thing is still considered a phone. We can define ourselves. Libraries can do whatever they want to fulfill their mission and not be I guess I want to say trapped by the past. We can build on our great tradition, but we don't need to solve the problems we've been solving in the exact same way. And user experience design can help us figure this out, figure out what other opportunities there are. So in the past, we have helped solve the problem of information scarcity by being a place of access to content. What is the problem with the problem of information scarcity these days? Anything come to mind?
Lack of it.
Right. There's a lack of information scarcity. So if we take out the double negative, there's a lot of information, and there is no longer a problem of information scarcity. There might be a problem of information quality. There might be a problem with information retrieval, but scarcity is not one of the problems. So whether it's books, whether it's stuff online, we are sort of set up in libraries to fulfill our mission in libraries to help our communities by being a place of access to information, and I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in how we're currently solving our mission. So we do more, it's true. We do story time, we do programming, and I think we should build upon those things for sure, but we're known for being a place about books. Reading is changing. I'm not here to give a lecture about the sky is falling because of ebooks, but I at least think it is kind of shifting territory, and if our foundation is on shifting territory, I think that is at least worth thinking about, talking a little bit about. And there are problems with our electronic products. They can be difficult to use. Here we have a guy who got frustrated about trying to use some online resources from this library, and we get to step 19 and give up on the stupid library. Not cool, right? So that's just a bit about this big picture issue right now in libraries, us being kind of focused on providing content, and that being, I don't think it tells the whole story about libraries. But there's some smaller scale things too that user experience design has a few things to say about. And these are some fun issues of interaction design. So what's interaction design? It's like, you know, just arranging things to elicit or prevent a certain behavior. So here are some forms of interaction design in libraries, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but luckily we've moved beyond this one. We moved beyond this one. Here's some old library cards. This is a form of interaction design, pretty cool. Signage in libraries, big form of interaction design, certainly one of my soapboxes. Here's just a lowest common denominator, least amount of effort sign. Here's a great sign. It says something totally obvious. When you talk, people can hear what you say. This sign is not necessary. Dr. D, this sign and comes from Lake Worth, a little bit north of you, or maybe south of you, actually. This is from a Cephalon library. So beautiful Art Deco building, this library, 1920s library, filled to the brim with just stuff that had been accumulated over the years. And I helped this library declutter and kind of get its building back into a shape of former glory, and it was a super fun project. But anyway, when you walked into the library, there's this beautiful portico, but from the entrance, you can see 5 of these signs.
Not necessary, I agree.
Another great library sign, which was probably some sort of story here. Can you go walk around a library and take down a bunch of signs? This is a really good thing for libraries to do. I've worked with a couple libraries in which we have removed 100% of the signage in their buildings, and things do not go haywire. In fact, one library, it felt like they were getting a lot of directional questions. People couldn't find anything, even though there were signs. We took down the signs, and the librarians got fewer directional questions. People seem to be finding things better without signs. What's up with that? The language we use in libraries is an important form of interaction design. Here we have an old-fashioned term, cookery, one that is used by cooking nerds and librarians, but has now been changed, no longer a Library of Congress subject heading. Now it's cooking. That's great. Our desks, another form of interaction design that I could talk a lot about. This is the classic reference desk fortress that is meant to protect the librarian from the scary library user, right? This sets up an us versus them dynamic. It does not encourage collaboration, and this is I mean, all libraries have many libraries have big desks like this. We buy expensive desks that are meant to last and then never change them, haven't changed them. If you ever get a chance to visit the downtown Jacksonville Public Library, or it was earlier this spring, they have this really beautiful building, and on each floor, before you walk into the reading rooms, there are these huge desks that are seriously like intimidating, and you have got to like squeak past the desk, and it's this really strange dynamic. Okay, at any rate, is this desk better? I like to talk about this desk because it is an example of what I like to call design washing. This desk looks better. It adds aesthetic value, and that's important. We shouldn't discount aesthetic value, but there is much more to design than just the way something looks. Functionally, this desk, to me, is the same as this one. Sets up an us versus them dynamic and does not encourage collaboration. It looks cool, so that's great, but let's user experience is not just about making things look pretty. It goes much deeper than that. Another example of design washing, I think, is this nice packaging from the post office. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I often get confused about all the myriad of options in the post office. I wish it was simpler. But this box looks nice, right? Sometimes the promise doesn't live up to the reality doesn't live up to the promise. So we can be paternalistic in libraries, another form of interaction design, and of course our digital stuff, an important form of interaction design. This looks like a very, very old website. It's from only 4 years ago. This library created a glossary of library terminology, and instead of improving the language that they use, instead of making the language intelligible, they are attempting here to turn people into little librarians. Not a sound strategy in my mind. Here's the kitchen sink approach to a library website. They have done, in essence, very little design work here. Sure, there's some visual design, but they have not anticipated my needs as a student coming to this site. The intention behind this sort of kitchen sink approach is noble and great. I understand they have a lot of different options. They want to say, hey, I want to make sure the students can find what we have, so let's expose all these things. But in the end, it dilutes the page, and no choices are made, and this page doesn't direct me to do anything in particular. And of course our OPACs, which library users find indistinguishable from our websites. They think of them as one thing. At any rate, often they give a different interface than our websites, and in this one I've done a search for John Steinbeck and I get no results. Boo. Okay, also more online database stuff. But let's pretend for a minute here that we have all sorts of resources and that we could provide some amazing content with some amazing interfaces and do something like this or something like this. But let's be honest, it would end up looking more like this, I'm sure. Is this the end goal? Should we double down on being a place of access to content? I don't think so, because it puts us at a strategic disadvantage and it makes us copy what other folks are doing. And in this way, it's letting other entities define what it is a library does. I want us to do something different. I want libraries to move away from being what Joan Farr Williams has called the grocery store model of librarianship, where someone walks in the building, grabs something, and leaves and does something with it elsewhere. And that definitely does not capture the transformative nature of libraries. What's more, we do have some canary in the coal mine action here, where these content houses are no longer with us. In this discussion, we need to talk about circulation statistics. There is only one good type of circ stat you will find if you have not worked in a library, and that is one that is more than the month before. This is how we tell the library story to our stakeholders, and it certainly does not paint the full picture of what libraries do. Stacks are flatlining. That's not good. If they're going down, that's good, but that's not good. And in the past 2 years, when I'm working with libraries, I ask folks, I've asked folks from all over the country what their circ stats are doing. Very few libraries, maybe 1 or 2, have skyrocketing circ, and the rest are pretty much declining. So it's tough out there. Stories like this, I think, are a little bit crazy. Here we have a 24-hour automated quote-unquote library. Well, this library is missing an important part, the people. This is just content. This is like a red box. This is a great service, but to me, it's not a library. So setting up those issues that libraries are facing, what can user experience do to help with these things? Well, as you can tell, I've talked a little bit about technology stuff with websites, but we talked about a lot of other things besides tech things, and user experience can apply to all of it. And it is certainly not just tech fixes. There is no one widget that a library can buy to make their user experience awesome. And it is not just customer service. I think you're probably getting the picture that it is all aspects of the library. The customer service plus the building, plus the website, plus the brochures. All of these things add up to inform an overall user experience like that. Boom. So central to doing user experience work is realizing that we are different from the people that we're trying to serve. And this is a way to build empathy, and it's at once distancing ourselves from them, but also letting us get closer. Because when we recognize that there's a difference, we can plan to meet people where they need to be met. Here's a little bit of a holy trinity for user experience design. We need to be creating things that are useful, usable, and desirable. I'm not sure desirability can just be sprinkled on top like this. I think it needs to be built in more deeply, but I do also think that something needs to be a little bit like useful and reliable before it can be ultimately desirable. So still working on this graphic a little bit, but as part of this issue or opportunity really of creating desirable institutions, I think we need to be designing libraries to connect with people on an emotional level. Why do we need to do this? Emotions are important when it comes to making choice. Interesting book, this, tells a story of a guy who had a brain tumor and then had surgery and in the process lost the ability to emote. He had no emotions. He wasn't happy, he wasn't sad, he was just totally flat. An unexpected consequence is that he lost his ability to make choices. This guy couldn't decide what color pen he should be using, let alone anything higher level, like where to go for lunch or life decisions. He was just incapable. And through study, this neuroscientist and other folks found out that the story we tell ourselves about how we make choices, that we are highly rational creatures who go through this calculus and weigh benefits and costs and make a choice, is a total piece of fiction. Our choosing is based on emotional decisions that often are not on the, found on the conscious level. I think we want people to be active choosers of the library, and I think when we get to the emotional level, we can make people rabid library fans. Now, this doesn't mean that we need to be making people laugh or cry all the time, but I think it has maybe a little bit to do with thinking about how we can improve their lives and definitely implications for marketing as well. Now, I'm all for libraries doing good marketing and good public relations, but user experience design says, hey, we can't shout at people enough to convince them to use our stuff. It's not the way it works. Instead, we need to listen to people's needs, and if we listen to people's needs and make sure people know that we have services to help them, then that's the way forward. A great article about this is called What's a Library Worth? It's by Eleanor Jo Rogers. And in this article, one of my favorite articles in all of the literature, she says, no library exists in an ecosystem. In a vacuum. All libraries exist in an ecosystem. Libraries need to turn outward and do what's good for the ecosystem, not do what's good for the library. And if a library turns outward and does what's good for the town, the corporation, the hospital, the school, if the library focuses on doing that, then two good things will happen. Number one, stakeholders in the ecosystem will recognize that the library is doing good work and helping, and then support the library more. And since the library is making the ecosystem healthier, it is by definition making the library healthier because the library is part of the ecosystem, and that's how ecosystems work. So hopefully all of that stuff piqued your interest about why user experience is important and why we need to be thinking about it in libraries and as information workers in general. I want to talk to you about some techniques, because this listening piece, we have a kind of a formalized set of techniques and skills to be good listeners. So, at the start of doing user experience work, I think it's always useful to take a snapshot of where the organization currently is, and you can consider that a user experience audit. This way you can have some good before and after information about the work that you have been doing. So my partner Amanda and I wrote a book called Useful, Usable, and Desirable, Applying UX Design to Your Library, and it is essentially a list of checkpoints that libraries, both academic and public and special, can go through to analyze all the different touch points in their library. The book lists why these things are important, gives information about how to improve these touch points. We're really happy with it. It's been out for, I don't know, a year and a half or a couple of years now, and we're also doing some implementations of this book using it as a framework in our professional practice, and it's pretty great. So another way that you can do some auditing is find someone else to help. When you are in the same place day in, day out, you tend to get blinders, and it's tough to see the situation from a fresh perspective. So if you can bring in a fresh set of eyes, and you can go to another place to be a fresh set of eyes and come up with a user experience partnership, I think that's a great way to do some observations and learn about other places and your own place. It is important to develop your analytical and critical skills for experiences. And when I'm working with folks, I tend to send people out to think about experiences and to formally talk about them. We call them service safaris, and got a couple of worksheets that I used to guide people's observations. And the idea isn't to find ideas that libraries could steal and implement for themselves. If that happens, great, but really the main focus is getting people better at talking about experiences so they can then apply that skill set to their own institutions. So some user research techniques. I think it's great to keep a no log. Anytime someone at a public service point has to say no or redirects someone to a different place, take note of this. This is an interesting technique to see what people are asking for that an institution is not able to provide. Usability testing is a great gateway user research technique. Maybe some of you have been involved with usability testing. We go through this in the user experience seminar. Folks get a chance to get some practice doing usability testing, and you essentially give people some tasks to do on a website, watch them do it, and see where they trip up, where they're successful, and you can always find things to improve. And this is important. It helps move the discussion from just people talking about opinions to also talking about data as well. Another favorite technique of mine is borrowed from the field of anthropology, that of contextual inquiry. And in a library setting, this amounts to sitting down and observing people use different parts of the library. Not a lot of folks take the time to do this in their work, but I think it's very important. So for instance, if you wanted to study how things were going with your circulating items in the library, you could sit down for a half an hour and observe people at the self-check machines. You do this for a half an hour, your colleague does it for a half an hour, a few other people do it for a half an hour. You come back, you gather your data, you pool it together, you look for patterns, and in most cases you can find some things to improve. So just a quick example, I was working with the Central Library in Mexico City. They have this really cool reading space on each floor, in each corner. This is the only time I saw the space being used as intended, with a laptop at the desk and someone reading on the comfy couch. The rest of the time, people were like this. Something about the space is not supporting people's needs. Here's another one. In the Chapel Hill Public Library, this is the only time I've seen someone use, actually, I take that back. I've never seen someone use the kick step stool as it was intended. The rest of the time, people are using the kick step stools as a piece of furniture, an ottoman. What's up with that? So contextual inquiry is great for learning about people's behavior, and we want to be designing for behavior, not opinions, because people's opinions, how they say they will behave, is not often how they will actually behave. And people's behavior is a great clue to what they really want. Getting at this aspect of what it is people want, last column I wrote for Library Journal, it should be out, I guess, next month, is I deal with this idea of libraries asking people, what do you want out of the library? And I think it's again, a noble question to ask. I think it's great that a library would care about what someone wants. But when you're asking someone, what do you think your library should be? That's a hard enough question for librarians to answer, let alone the general public. And as I showed you in that a screenshot from OCLC, people's conceptions of libraries, especially public libraries, is that of books, and it's very difficult to get out of that frame of mind. So I think it's asking a lot of people to kind of reinvent the library by asking them what it is a library should do. Instead, I would encourage us to look at people's needs and behaviors and get at those in different ways, and then for us to do the design work and to create libraries that are responsive to those things. This is why I'm a little bit ho-hum on surveys. Doing user interviews is another great user experience technique. If you've had any experience doing reference interviews, you have essentially done a user interview. It's all about asking open-ended questions and learning about what people have to say. Oftentimes, the results of a user interview process, they are put into persona documents. Here's a set of persona documents for a library in Idaho, and these people are fictional characters that represent actual library users, so that when the library has a decision to make about a new program or service, well, it better be relevant to one of these folks, because these are representative of the actual users. What I showed you earlier is a user experience technique called a journey map, a very basic one, but this, again, tells the story of what it's like to use this particular service, of the journey that someone goes through to use this service. And if you list out all the steps it takes to do a task, you can analyze each step and determine what's working, what's not, and it's very useful. And here is one library assigning a smiley face or a sad face or a mean face about different steps of a task. Okay, so that is just a very brief song and dance about some user research techniques. And I want to take the rest of the time, since I showed some examples of poor library user experience earlier, to show some good examples. This, to me, is an early form of emotional design. Gutenberg, when he invented the movable type, could have chosen a lot of different ways to represent letters. He chose to make a type that was reminiscent of script writing of a monk. And I think he did so because he didn't want to freak people out. He wanted to still connect this book with the actual pen-written word. So I think this is a form of emotional design. And if you use Uber, a little bit of a creepy company. They're like kind of bullies, but I'm ashamed to say I still use Uber on occasion. It's this interesting thing where I almost don't think they're selling transportation. They're like selling this feeling of having a personal driver. It's kind of weird. Nice form of emotional design here. Chipotle didn't have any carnitas, so they have this very bold apology. They give a reason why, and there's a little humanizing sentence at the bottom. Trust us, we're just as disappointed as you. You know, they didn't have to do that, but they went the extra mile and made a connection with this, with people. Here's another form of emotional design. This computer looks this way because they wanted people to not be afraid of it. They wanted people to think it was cute. They wanted this to be appropriate for a living room, and they designed it accordingly. Likewise, remember these old Apple ads? To me, this is all about emotional design. This very plainly, this advertising campaign dealt with two personalities. And isn't it through personalities that we get to know people? So we're connecting with Apple on an emotional level here in a certain way. Even if you don't have to create an email newsletter, I highly encourage you to sign up for the service MailChimp just to go through their onboarding process. It's quite fun and quite easy. And when you use MailChimp to send a newsletter, when you send one out, Monkey gives you a high five, which is pretty fun. My mom got me a subscription to these razor blades for my birthday last year, and I thought this was a nice kind of humanizing connection, a little piece of emotional design here, giving an explanation of the packaging is changing on something else is better coming soon. Okay, so that's just a bit about emotional design. Some better touch points in libraries. This was the bad example. Here is a redesigned, better example. Going from this to this is not rocket science. It just takes a little bit of graphic design know-how and can easily be done. Here's a real-life example. I love this. So I was going to work with the library in Iowa City, the public library, and they have this sign, and I was going to take them to task for this sign, not in a jerk way. Hey, I don't know if you get this, but doing criticism is central to doing user experience. Being critical is part of the process, but this is strictly should be a constructive criticism, because if you come into a situation in the workplace and you're like a jerk about being critical, then the user experience project will get nowhere, right? At any rate, I was unable to take them to task for this sign because they had already redesigned it. Check out this. I think it's so good. Number one, it's not ugly anymore. Number two, it's got some library branding. Number three, it emphasizes the positive. It's all about helping rather than kind of like punishing. Really, really great redesign. I'm just going to run through some other nice signage. So we have some time for discussion. If you're interested in branding in libraries, Edmonton Public Library does a fantastic job. Here's an example I saw recently from here in Portland of nice signage and zoning. Different library users have diverse needs, and I think all sorts of behaviors should be accommodated for in libraries. And here we have this community college creating a nice zoning program with some cool signs to indicate what can be done where. There's another one, some more zoning. Just some more nice graphic design, because it's nice to see in libraries. A good website, clear writing, nice typography. I mentioned before this problem of the catalog and the disparate, separate interfaces between the OPAC and library website, or library databases and library website. Hennepin County has solved that problem. You can't tell if you're on the website proper or on the OPAC. It's all one kind of seamless thing. It's very nice. This, to me, is the opposite of the kitchen sink approach that I showed earlier from U of I. This site has made design decisions. It is telling me that I can find things, I can request things, there are services, there's a search box front and center. This has some design decisions made, and I like it. Really cool library-related website, War Inc. This is a project from Contra Costa Library in California and a bunch of partners telling the story of returning veterans through their tattoos. Really cool piece of content from this library. Here's a nice service point from the James B. Hunt Library at NCSU. And I like this concept of there being no one point of service in a library, much like happens at the Apple Store. I love a term that I heard recently is the everywhere is a desk library. And working right now with the public library in Chapel Hill to implement an everywhere is a desk situation. And it's been quite interesting shifting people's perspectives from that of staffing a service desk to delivering service, and divorcing those two things and conceptualizing the desk as a tool, not as an end in and of itself. If a library must circulate stuff, can we circulate things that people can't get elsewhere? Here we have Hillsborough Library outside of Portland. They have this cool library of things where you can check out stuff for the kitchen, games, tools, pretty neat. Chicago Public and New York Public have been circulating Wi-Fi hotspots and helping solve the problem of the digital divide in their communities to great success. This library, you can check out a piece of land. You can garden and grow food at the library with like-minded folks. Really neat. So what kind of content experiences can we create? We can gather people and have them work with stuff that they enjoy, things that they are enthusiastic about, cookbook club. Here's a content experience. Cleveland Public Library worked with partners to recreate children's storybooks throughout Cleveland in empty lots, so you can go and walk through a storybook. What kind of creation spaces can we create in our libraries? This is a picture of Library 10 in Helsinki, where there's a recording studio, a radio station, there are instruments that you can check out. And we see more artists and musicians, libraries inviting artists and musicians in to share spaces. I think that's a nice relationship. Here is a screenshot, an article that is about Chattanooga Library and their makerspace. And this guy is printing 3D prosthetic hands for his son in the library. Pretty neat creation going on. So you don't have to have a cool green tree in your library to take advantage of library space, but I think the library space is a great strategic advantage, and we can do some neat things with it. Here we have Oak Park Public Library's Idea Box, creating different experiences throughout the year depending on what's going on outside of Chicago. So one winter, they made a park, a nice sunny park for the poor people of Chicago with their brutal winters. And they do all sorts of different things with this idea box, and here is another iteration of it. So this is an experimental learning space, and you can go on their website and learn more about what they're doing with it. Back to Helsinki and Library 10, they're opening up a new central library next year, and this library is going to have a sauna in it. Perhaps not contextually appropriate for the United States, but definitely appropriate for Finland, where sauna is a part of their life. Another cool experience thing from library close to Helsinki 10, the new library in Aarhus, Denmark, is very flexible open space. And in the library, there's a big bell. And every time someone's born in the hospital in Aarhus, the bell in the library rings. And I think this art project is a really neat way to connect the library to the community and life in the community. Co-located libraries. Here we have Anythink Library, one of their branches, co-located with a school and a theater. I think that's a neat thing. And here we have a library in a mall with gyms and restaurants around. Can we think of our library spaces like an old gymnasium, or even, I guess, current gymnasium? Maybe this looks familiar to some of us. Depending on the context and depending on the needs, many different things can be done in the space. You can play basketball, you can play tennis, you can wrestle, you can play badminton, you can play soccer. Can we create flexible spaces to accommodate different needs? Here we have a library of library furniture that is meant to be semi-permanent in nature. So do we always need to have huge building projects, or can we do smaller semi-temporary things as well? Co-working, I think, is a great service for libraries to explore, whether it's students or being a business incubator. Ultimately, I think user experience design wants us to solve problems in our community, and libraries can help us help do that. Here we have a story of the Free Library of Philadelphia helping solve the problem of homelessness. So they are essentially working with an organization to help people who are experiencing homelessness get jobs and work in the library. And we see some similar things happening with social workers and nurses in libraries, delivering services as well as information. I love food, so this story is one that excites me. Enoch Pratt Free Library helping solve the problem of food scarcity in their communities. You can pick up healthful groceries in the library. Pretty cool. Another co-location thing, Vancouver Public Library and YWCA teaming up. There will be low-income single mothers and their dependent children living at the library. Pretty amazing stuff. So can we be community experts? Can we learn so much? Can we have, in addition to our collection development policies, can we have a user research plan where we're collecting information about our users so that when the Parks and Rec Department needs to know what kind of playground equipment to put in, they turn to the library because the library knows so much about the needs and wants of the community. I think to do all this cool work, we need to sort of get off this hamster wheel of circ stats and promote some new standards of success. And some of the recent work on library outcomes, I think, is promising, but it's not one that we have solved yet. This UX stuff is not new. Here's a quote from 1903 talking about managing the library in a hospitable way, taking away unnecessary restrictions. Really nice sentiment here, all the way from Miss Gracia Ultra Countryman, one of the librarians from Hennepin County in 1903. So all these things, again, all the decisions we make impact the UX, and I think we need to make sure we're making improvements in libraries. Want to leave us with this, our international symbol for libraries, someone reading all by themselves, alone. Great symbol in many ways, but not representative of what we do on a daily basis in libraries. So here is my quick revision. It's much more messy and less iconic, but hopefully more descriptive of what it is we do. And yeah, finally, got some questions. I just encourage all of you to take your roles as information designers seriously and to have it in the front of your mind when you're working with people and information. All right, I ran through my slides, hoping that you all would have some discussion items, and let's get to it.
This was great. Thank you very much, Aaron. I had taken, I know I mentioned this, and I'm always pushing classes that I've taken, but I had taken Aaron's class before, and I did the service Safari and usability testing and several of the things that he mentioned today. And it's not only is it fun, but it's incredibly eye-opening, so I really, really recommend it. One thing I wanted to ask you, Aaron, is how do you feel about libraries? I don't know. So my pet peeve for libraries is using SpringShare as a basis of their website.
Sure.
I don't know if there's something you could tell us about it or comment, or if you have I think a couple of examples you had there looked kind of like that. But to me, they kind of makes libraries websites look like it's 1996. So
I fully endorse your perspective on this. It's very, like many things, it's a tool that could be used well. However, I think that particular tool, LibGuides and SpringShare stuff, must be designed in such a way that it makes it really easy to do it wrong. Because I have seen maybe one or two SpringShare LibGuides where things look okay, but I think it takes restraint or a lot of skill to do that. I think it's really easy to get it wrong. Just reviewed a website for a university in Australia. Their LibGuides had 9 or 10 point font on them with so many words, and I could not read a single thing on their page. So yeah, I think there are probably better tools.
If anybody doesn't have a microphone and you want to type into the chat box, I'd be happy to relay your question to Aaron.
And I can see the chat again, so.
Oh, okay, great.
there was some conversation.
Mahasan?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Oh, okay, hi.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, hopefully I didn't miss it, but I'm wondering about the relationship between user experience and design thinking. I don't think I heard you use the phrase design thinking. I'm not really clear if design thinking is just a way to get to a great experience or if there's some distinction between the two concepts that maybe I'm just not clear about.
That is a fantastic question, and I took out probably about 10 slides about design thinking, just because I wanted to leave some more time for conversation. But let me talk about it. Design thinking is a methodology for solving problems. A lot of folks think design is this mysterious process where a genius has a sketchbook and smokes a lot of cigarettes and wears square glasses and then comes up with a cool design for something. Now, it can happen that way, but design thinking is this methodology with many common, there are many different flavors of it, but it has these common elements of learning about the problem you're trying to solve, studying behavior based around that problem, prototyping solutions to come up with some potential answers to this problem, evaluating the prototypes to see what's working and what's not, and then finally implementing something when you arrive at a good solution. So design thinking does not equal user experience design, nor vice versa, but it's very similar in that it's almost like a tool that user experience designers can use to help solve problems, and they both get at this issue of learning about behavior and learning about problems on a deeper level than we often do in libraries, so we can come up with relevant and good solutions to these problems. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to read more about design thinking, check out The Art of Innovation by Tom Kelly, and also there is a PDF, a whole huge toolkit called Design Thinking for Librarians that was made by the design firm IDEO in conjunction with Chicago Public Library. Really great toolkit.
The future of library evaluation through user
experience.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Elizabeth, this is another great question about library evaluation. Should we be evaluating experience rather than counting use data? I don't see it as an either-or proposition. We probably need both. We're probably never going to get away from reporting numbers in a spreadsheet, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think usage data can teach us a lot of things, and I think it's a fine thing to keep track of. We probably need to do more, though, as well. And telling stories about library usage and the benefits of the libraries in our communities is much different. It's much harder to do. But I think the more of that a library can implement and get their stakeholders to listen to, the better off the library would be. And again, I think this maybe gets at connecting on an emotional level to people. I think very few of us can get super emotional looking at an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, maybe certain ones, but I think it's probably a lot easier to make an emotional connection with the story.
Hey, Aaron, I was wondering if you could discuss generating buy-in. I'm in a situation in the library where I have an entrenched supervisor, and this person quit learning about 10 years ago and just wants to maintain the status quo. How do I change that mindset, or do I just have to wait till she retires?
Brian, another fine question. Oftentimes, improving user experience amounts to creating organizational change, and getting staff buy-in is essential. So I'm gonna bring this also related to the question that Jeff asked about the no one point of service or the everywhere is a desk library, because I've recently experienced a confluence of these two things: staff buy-in and this issue of getting away with large service points at the Chapel Hill Library. My number one thought is that everyone needs to be included in the process, and when you can give people some experience, when you can give people a say, and when you can include people in the process, that is how you can allay fears get people involved and get people to, I guess, buy in. So, in the case of the service desk at Chapel Hill, it was pretty much a known thing that we wanted to get rid of this big circle desk, but we also knew that staff were very accustomed to delivering service in this way. So we went through a very deliberate, very inclusive process to define an overarching service philosophy, and this was a ground-up effort. We studied how service was being delivered in the library. This was a ground-up effort. We did a number of different things to let the data speak for itself and to expand people's minds and let them imagine a different way of delivering service in the library. And it was, it's a lot to ask of folks to reconceptualize what they've been doing for so many years. So, the story that I just told is a little bit opposite of what you're asking about, Brian, in that you have someone in the administration who is less willing to make change. Oftentimes, well, I've actually heard it both ways. Either there are administrators who don't want change, or there are staff that are resistant to change. I think it boils down to trying to get the focus to be less about the preferences of librarians and more about the preferences of users. And if that little tidbit can be unlocked, then that opens up the situation to all sorts of change. Now, doing that and getting people to care about other people, well, that's like a question for the ages, I guess. So in the end, I think that's maybe a little bit of a non-answer, but I guess my overall thought is you got to involve people from the beginning to give them a say and to help understanding. Maybe not exactly applicable to your situation. Sorry about that. I wish I had the silver bullet for you.
Oh, no worries. That was very helpful. Thank you.
So, Jeff, let me just speak to you, and then I guess it's 7 o'clock and we probably should wrap this up, but some ideas for some reluctant decision makers. Can you get folks to go on some service safaris and to start thinking about experiences? And if people are put in the place of being the experiencer rather than the one designing experiences, this can help clue people in to their role in shaping experiences and what it might be like to receive service in different ways. So if you can have folks starting to talk about delivering about having experiences and comparing experiences, you might be able to more easily turn the conversation then to the experiences that the library is providing and that the experience that patrons are having. I guess that also might boil down to just fundamental principles and ideas about delivering library service at your institution. Do you have something in your mission statement or otherwise that says the library is going to be friendly or the library is going to connect people to information? What kind of foundational things can you use to show that you can better live that mission in a different built environment? And then maybe something more practical, can you have an experiment where you do a day without a desk and you say, okay folks, we're going to put a drop cloth over all the big service points today, and we're going to be proactive and we're going to rove throughout the stacks. Let's do this, and let's get together the next day and talk about what we learned. That might be another way to tiptoe into the situation. Sarah asks when the UX class is being offered next. It will be offered, I think, in the fall. Yeah, teaching Info 200 again in the summer, and then I think in the fall. $287. It's a seminar. Oh, and what? And I think it's 1 credit. Is that right? Basha, Brian?
3 credits.
3 credits. Yeah. Okay. I don't even know these things.
Wait, you thought all of this work was just for 1 credit?
No. I guess I was just confused.
In that case, beware, people. But yes, it was 3 credits when Brian and I took the class together, and it was really great. It is. Thank you so much, Erin. It was really great. I don't want to stop any questions, but it is 7 o'clock, and I'm trying to be mindful of everybody's time. Erin only committed to 1 hour, and I don't want to keep him here against his will. But so thank you so much for talking to us. Of course, you're welcome to stick around if you'd like to, but feel free to also just give us the boot and move on with your day.
Well, I would like to stick around, of course, but I think I'm going to read a little bit about the Titanic to my kid and then put him to bed. So
that sounds like a great plan. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thanks
Thank you,
a bunch,
Erin.
folks. I appreciate it. Hit me up with any questions, and Basha, Brian, let's have a coffee sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, bye, guys.